This is HBR News number 371, Teachers versus Tate. Canada makes euthanasia a viable option, where we reflect on the stories of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello everyone, and I forgot to mention this all throughout August. Happy Men's History Month. I understand that in some circles of the internet, August is Men's History Month, so if you are celebrating men's history in the month of August, then, I will also recognize it as well. I will acknowledge it, and hopefully, there's a lot to be thankful for, like everything that men have brought us, which is just about everything. My name is Brian, and I am the host of HBR News, and I am joined by, as always, my austere patriarchs and our handmaiden, Hannah and Dr. Randomercam. Mike J is probably going to be along in a little while, but right now he's not here just yet. So we have a great show lined up for you guys today, though, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comments section. On this week's HBR News Show, we're going to be talking about a follow-up to the Rayshard Brooks case. You guys might remember the Rayshard Brooks case. We're just going to essentially close the book on that chapter. We're going to be talking about a story in the UK where teachers apparently are trying to organize and team up against misogyny in their hallways from the young, dangerous teenage boys that walk amongst them. Canada is now encouraging self-deletion to spare their healthcare system and more. So stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So I had to look around, and since we're on the subject of Andrew Tate, I'm noticing that there are a lot more articles coming out, essentially warning us of the dangers of alpha male influencers. And so I found this one from Vice magazine. It is actually entitled "The Strange Allure of Extreme Alpha Male Influencers." And it says, my social media is awash with outspoken men with bulging abs eating raw meat. Why do I find it aspirational? By Tom Usher. Of course, he's writing for Vice magazine, so he's probably a little bit more confused than he might be interested in this subject. But we're going to talk about it in the patron show. So if you guys want to be a part of that discussion, either as a member of the audience, much like you are now, or as a part of the actual panel itself, then please consider becoming a Badger by going to feedthebadger.com and starting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into the Discord, where you'll be able to participate in all of the additional, activities and community events and things. There are movie viewing nights, there are game nights, there's always people hanging out and streaming. There are discussions, there's all kinds of stuff, writers' workshops, etc. So, whatever tickles your interest, I'm sure that you'll be able to find something in our Discord that will scratch that for you. So, anyway, please go to feedthebadger.com, give if you can, and also remember that our fundraiser is still ongoing. You can also help us out with that by going to feedthebadger.com / oh my god. I have a link in the description. I'm just going to say it that way. It's feedthebadger.com / projects / badger - media - blitz. But there's a link in the description, so you can just go in there and help us out that way. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we have been yeeted from the internet because, I don't know, collateral damage, some kind of nuclear explosion that just happened to catch us along with whoever else, and you want to make sure that we're still alive, go to honeybadgerradio.com or badgerfeed.com so you'll know where all of our content continues to live and survive. So with all that said, we're going to go ahead and get into the stories, and we're going to start with a follow-up to the Rayshard Brooks story. Mike J's not here yet, so I'm just going to have to do the reading, but that's okay. So here we go. In Atlanta, Georgia, during the height of the George Floyd riots, police officers Garrett Rolfe and Devin Brosnan responded to a call about a car parked in the drive-thru of a local Wendy's restaurant. Inside the car, the officers found 27-year-old Rayshard Brooks asleep at the wheel. Brooks was clearly intoxicated and well past the legal blood alcohol limit to drive. Both of these things he denied. After failing a sobriety test, thoroughly, like a champ, Brooks was placed under arrest. As the officers attempted to place him in handcuffs, Brooks began resisting and eventually wrestled a taser from one of the officers. He began running and discharged the taser at the officers. Officer Rolfe responded by firing 3 shots from his service handgun, 2 of which struck and killed Brooks. With George Floyd's death occurring mere weeks beforehand, the story was picked up and ran with by the media. The officers were indefinitely suspended and eventually fired as community outrage grew, despite the release of body cam and dash cam footage of the incident. Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard would go on to charge officers Rolfe and Brosnan with felony murder, aggravated assault, criminal damage to property, and violations of oath of office. Shortly afterward, Officer Rolfe would sue the mayor as well as the interim police chief, claiming that his firing violated his constitutional rights. The Atlanta Civil Service Board would reverse his firing and grant him back pay on May 5th, 2021. District Attorney Paul Howard would later be voted out of office, and the case would be handed to the new District Attorney, Fani Willis. The case was then handed to a special prosecutor, the head of the state prosecuting attorneys council, Pete Skandalakis. Ultimately, Skandalakis opted to not pursue charges against the officer, stating the following, quote, "Both acted as reasonable officers would under the facts and circumstances of the events of that night. Both acted in accordance with well-established law and were justified in the use of force regarding the situation. Was it objectively reasonable that Rolfe can use deadly force? We determined it was," end quote.
Webster's Dictionary. This is always a good start to a speech. Webster's Dictionary does not define racism as making an issue of race where race is not an issue. But in my opinion, it should, as should anyone who really wants to pin these things down. Any kind of prejudice, in my opinion, is the act of making an issue of something that is not an issue. And indeed, race should not be an issue, except when it comes to certain matters of biology, like do you need sunscreen or are you the father of this baby? That sort of thing. Unfortunately, in an age in which oikophobic racism is already a major factor in your country, as it is in many countries across the West, and anything bad happening to a black person could very well become headline news by the next day, can you really blame police officers for being apprehensive whenever they encounter a criminal who happens to be black? This, of course, is not to excuse any cops in the past who profiled black men as dangerous with no reason to do so. I'm not denying there is and always has been some cops who are genuinely racist because they make an issue of race where race is not an issue. But in the current political climate, with the mass influence of BLM and the ideologies that led to it, racist cops are few and far between compared with people who have been brainwashed by these race Marxists. White people brainwashed by BLM will not resist arrest. They will comply with the police, perfectly confident in their white privilege. Whereas black people brainwashed by BLM will be somewhat tainted with irrational fear and panic, or just entitlement. They're likely to assume that they're only being arrested because of police racism, so they are far more likely to act unpredictably. It's not even that black people are more likely to be criminals. I'm not. That's a different discussion. It's that they're more likely to distrust the police, and the lying shitsmiths in the mass media are 100% more likely to kick up a massive stink about any force being used against black people. And for these reasons, it's not racist for a cop to be more apprehensive in the presence of a black criminal, because in that instance, race is actually an issue. It's been made an issue by these racial Marxists. If you really want race relations to improve, you all need to stop listening to these liars. The mass media needs to stop listening to these liars, and until they do, you all need to stop listening to the mass media when they reel off all these bullshit statistics and these lies by omission. Or at the very least, broaden your horizons when it comes to the media you consume. I know I'm once again preaching to the choir. If you're listening to us, your horizons must be fairly broad already. But I suppose this is the message you need to get out to the normies in your life. The legacy media is the enemy of the people, and it is the enemy of race relations. Turn off the TV, put down the newspaper, and touch some grass. And listen to Honey Badger Radio. Like and subscribe and share this video, because sharing is caring.
There you go.
Mike, I see that you're here. Is there anything you wanted to add? I'm sorry I read your bit, but...
Yeah, no problem. It's, old people.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine.
And then I kind of put all of it into the write up.
Yeah.
This is something that's been expanded upon quite endlessly.
Yeah,
and it's just glad that this reached the conclusion it really should have, which is, I mean, these guys did completely everything by the book. They had a DA that was absolutely trying to shaft them.
Yeah.
That's what DAs do. That's their job, unfortunately.
It does seem that way.
In this case, it was really bad.
This guy was especially progressive.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and they were reacting in the moment, because you remember there was a fiery... there was a mostly peaceful protest where they burned down the
They burned down the fucking Wendy's this happened at. The Wendy's had nothing to do with this, except this is just where it occurred, man.
Yeah.
I don't even think it was the Wendy's that called the cops. I think it was somebody in line behind him before he pulled over to the edge. But it's interesting too, because that mostly peaceful protest made huge news and everybody knew about it and everything. Well, then this happens, right? And the previous news of the officer being reinstated with back pay, and oddly enough, the locals did not once again rise up and burn down another fast food restaurant or any other kind of mostly peaceful protest, almost as if the people who showed up to protest the first time around weren't still there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm on the one hand, I'm glad that things turned out the way they did, because again, like Mike J said, it looks like everything was in order. I do find it interesting that now that we're kind of far away from the incident, because it's from like a year ago and some change. It's almost like the state prosecuting attorney guy, Pete Skandalakis, sorry, was just able to be frank about what happened and just said, yeah, they were being reasonable. This was this is basically open and shut. But at the time that this happened, even though there was footage and everything, I think that people wouldn't be very responsive to such a logical conclusion, because people were so emotional. And it's funny because the George Floyd riots appear to be to some degree a contributing factor to this incident. So it's almost like if you create enough chaos, then you can create opportunities for more chaos. So, like George Floyd, for example, starts, the death of George Floyd starts the riots. And then during the riots, there are arrests, there are beatings and assaults and murders. And any one of those additional incidents could have created more riots, because if someone, let's say, the cops show up to protect a business and they have to arrest a guy and he's resisting, and it may, like, escalate to a beating or a forceful arrest, or they're pitting him down and he's like, whining about being unable to breathe or whatever. So it's like you can use people's irrational emotional responses to incidents to create more opportunities for more incidents, so that you get more people responding, with rage. And that is essentially what I think this Rayshard Brooks thing was all about. And I'm not saying, like, I know that what happened was, and this is really funny because we used to take drunk driving very seriously. I mean, I think that we still do, but it's not like the cultural thing that it used to be, where we just thought drunk driving was one of the most irresponsible, dangerous things you could do, because there were maybe a couple of stories of children being killed in car accidents, and it seems like now, if I say, well, this guy who was clearly wasted, in the parking lot, somehow drove there, that's a drunk driver. Like, that's not good. That's breaking the law. And I'm just kind of I wouldn't say surprised, but I do find it interesting that something that we used to consider to be pretty heinous, which is drunk driving, is all of a sudden it's just not that important, because what now we have to worry about, like, racist cops or something, which again doesn't even fit the bill in this particular situation, but it takes such a massive priority over everything else that it's the only thing people can talk about with regards to the Rayshard Brooks story. And I think the more important thing is that he was a drunk driver, and that's got nothing to do with race anyways. So
just so people know, distracted driving and speeding are more commonly the causes of car accidents than drunk driving is. And those are incredibly common behaviors, and they're not penalized nearly as heavily as drunk driving, especially like distracted driving. Doesn't necessarily mean being on your, if you're eating a cheeseburger, you're engaging in distracted driving, and people do it all the time without getting penalized at all.
Yeah. All right. So, anyway, so I got nothing else to add on this. I'm just glad that things kind of like worked out, and I guess that's fine. This is just meant to be a little follow up. So, does anyone else have any thoughts on this story? All right, so we're gonna move on to the next one. Let us know what you guys think about this in the comment section. Let me just read the super chows and chats and stuff just to make sure I don't miss anything. Meredith G gives us $5 and says, "Honey for the Badgers, internet utility bill." Well, thank you, Meredith. Appreciate it. All right. And I don't see anything else. So be sure to send us, super chats, Rumble rants, and super chows if you want me to read them on air. So, all right, we're going to move on to the next story now. And we're going to be talking again about Andrew Tate, but not really. A phenomenon that I noticed that I think is quite interesting, and I think it's worth bringing up. So, teachers are being urged to keep an ear out for manosphere talk by students in school corridors. Although Andrew Tate is now banned from most social media platforms, teachers and child safety charities have pointed to Tate's almost 12.7 billion views on TikTok during the summer break. In the UK, an Ofcom data revealed last week that British people aged 15 to 24 spend an average of 57 minutes a day watching TikTok.
That's so depressing.
Yeah, that is pretty depressing. But I think that's the only social media that the young generation.
You certainly can't call such people bright-ons. They're dim-ons, if anything.
This is more time than they spend watching all traditional TV broadcasts. Yeah, but does anyone watch traditional TV broadcasts?
Boomers do. Boomers absolutely do. That's the problem.
They're the ones still paying the license, right? UK charity Hope Not Hate, oh, them again, plans to approach schools to inform teachers of Tate's politics, and they put it in quotes. Head of Hope Not Hate, Nick Lowles, said, whilst Hope Not Hate are calling on each tech platforms to do the right thing, it's essential that teachers and parents are aware of how dangerous Tate's content is and are able to recognize the signs of hate, end quote. They continue, quote, they should be on the lookout for talk of the manosphere, red pills, and so-called men's rights activists. He
Oh, this is so 2014. No, it's so now. This isn't a throwback to 2014. It's been going on since 2014 and before 2014. You didn't defeat this in 2014. It's still the same thing. Oh, anyway.
Yeah. The National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children has called for teachers to ensure pupils feel comfortable and confident sharing concerns about the online world, but said responsibility also lies with the government in delivering the online safety bill in full without delay, end quote.
All right. If you want children to feel, quote, comfortable and confident sharing concerns about the online world, guess what you really shouldn't be doing? Telling them exactly what kind of content and what subjects to avoid. Because then they're definitely not going to feel confident talking to you about those subjects. Pay attention, children. Andrew Tate is a scumbag. If you listen to him, we will send you to the principal's up the headmaster's office, and we will call your parents, and we will perform an intervention and possibly expel you. If you tell us you listen to Andrew Tate, we will make your life a living hell. Do you listen to Andrew Tate? No, miss, absolutely not. And then they go home and they look up Andrew Tate and they listen to everything he has to say, and then they never, ever tell their teachers about it. It's the same with drugs. The whole drugs are bad, okay? If you do drugs, you're bad, okay? Are you doing drugs? No, sir. I'm fucking 12. But as soon as I get hold of any drugs, I'm doing them, and I'm never telling you about it. I'm going to talk to people who understand both sides of the argument. Teenagers and, preteens are in that stage of life where there's no one they distrust more than the authority figures in their lives. If you tell them to do something, they will do the opposite just for the sake of doing it. Because they're curious. They want to know what these controversial things are really about. I mean, when it comes to looking both ways before crossing the street, yeah, fine. There's nothing controversial about being hit by a truck and being quadrispased on a life plug for the rest of your life. That makes sense. But when they eventually discover that cannabis doesn't kill you or even ruin your life, they come to discover that you cunts were lying to them. And when they discover that they can listen to Andrew Tate and nothing bad happens, they realized you were talking shit again. And this, as I explained last week, is why they make examples of the likes of Andrew Tate and Richard Spencer, Roosh V. You morons who don't know what they're talking about. It's why they never make examples of us here at Honey Badger Radio. If kids hear about us, they're going to learn some shit. They're going to learn from the people who the rest of the manosphere learned from. Because we've been doing this shit since the rest of you were in diapers. So, my advice to the kids out there, when you find the rabbit hole, you need to go deeper. You need to breeze past the idiots your teachers told you about and find the base motherfuckers they didn't tell you about because they were too scared to tell you about them. Although the same does not go for drugs. You might want to actually leave it at cannabis, if only to take a look around and smell the roses. Meth and fentanyl will actually ruin your life and kill you. It's complicated. Proceed with caution, but feel free to actually proceed. That's what children need to hear. When children see a stop sign, they go. When they see a go sign, they stop. The only sign they actually respect is a think for yourself sign. ironically, it's the only sign no one ever shows them.
I'm getting kind of old, but I'm thinking back to my high school days, and I remember all those hours and hours of walking up and down the school hallways, just talking exclusively about politics. Like, that was just such a popular discussion topic when I was in high school. Nothing about, who's going out with whom, or, when the next school dance was, or who won the last football game. None of those. Kids don't focus on things like that. What video games they want to play or anything like that. It's all about politics. Because when you're 12, that's just like, or 14 or even 16, like, that's the primary thing that's on your mind, right? Politics. You gotta know who's president. You gotta know who's running for your local city council, and just totally popular. And it doesn't alienate any of the other students at all if you have a focus on politics in your discussions in the school hallways when you're attending your local junior high or high school, middle school, and stuff like that. It's absolutely just the kids are just rife with discussion about politics. You could probably learn things from. They all know all about politics. It's the most popular subject of discussion. Definitely nothing about you tell your mom I'm spending the night at your house, and or you tell your mom you're spending the night at my house, and I'll tell my mom I'm spending the night at your house, and then we can go out past curfew and nobody will know. None of that ever happens. It's just all about politics. Totally.
Yeah. What I wanted to say about this is it doesn't really have much to do with Andrew Tate, the person, because I think that we all know that, like, he's popular on TikTok because he basically marketed himself well, and the kinds of content that young, men, tween boys and teenage boys, I think mostly, are sharing his content online, and they're also making their own TikTok account. So it doesn't really matter that he gets kicked off, because a lot of guys are like making their own sort of compilation videos where he's, Andrew Tate is giving like advice about basically what it means to be a man and all of that, right? So whether we agree with him or not doesn't really matter. I think the important thing is that these young men are doing this. They are using Tate's content, and I think it might just be because he's in the right place at the right time, because plenty of other, manosphere, red pillar guys that are talking, about things, and they're not really worrying too much about what their audience is. This is like how Kevin Samuels, for example, became really popular, especially in the black population, because he was saying things and he was unafraid to criticize black women, and he was he was also well marketed, and a lot of black men, they saw that and they were like, I want to be more like him, and so they watched Kevin Samuels. And then I think Andrew Tate is similar, except that his appeal appears to be for a much younger audience of men. And we're talking guys that are like 11, 12, up to like their, mid-teens. And of course, again, mostly what they're sharing has nothing to do with any of the douchey things that he, is suspected of doing or has been accused of doing, but mostly about things like how to be successful and what the right mindset is and all of that. And I think that is what is most striking, that these men are attracted to this. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, I think it means that if Andrew Tate were to disappear off the earth tomorrow, then there would just be another guy that would be similar, and they would just go to that guy. So it's not the person. It's not like a, cult of personality. What it is, in my opinion, is that the internet is where the culture war is taking place. And the culture war is actually a war for the hearts and minds of young men. I think that's what the war is actually about. I think there's one side that's trying to turn young men into obedient foot soldiers for wokeness, feminism, whatever you want to call it. It's happening through the education system. This is why these teachers feel so threatened by the existence of this guy, because he is a problem for them, because they're trying to program these boys, right, to be obedient male feminists, essentially, right, or leftists, or whatever you want to call it. And they're doing it through the education system. We know this is true. There's no refuting that. They're doing it through education. They're doing it through the culture. They're doing it through coercion, and they're doing it through like social control. And I think that these boys, they can sense that something is wrong, that they feel like they're being dragged somewhere they don't want to go. And that's why they're looking to people like Tate. And if it's not him, it'll be somebody else. It doesn't matter, because what these boys are looking for is a sense of their own masculine self, their own identity. And I think that that's what this culture war is actually about. Whoever wins the men, particularly the young men, will win the whole thing. And they know it. That's why they're doing this. That's why they're censoring people. That's why you're pushing them into the fringes. That's why they're trying to scare these boys, out of that whole thing. And they're trying to scare their parents by telling them, there are dangerous people sharing dangerous ideas. But the truth is, all it is teaching these boys to be essentially self-reliant and not dependent on like systems or groups or ideologies, but just to be their own person. And I think that's the reason why because I mean, why else would teachers work with big tech companies alongside them, politicians, people who pass policy, just to essentially make sure that these boys are not sharing this guy's ideas? It's not because this guy's ideas are so incredibly revolutionary. It's because he's giving them a sense of their own identity. And men are generally drawn towards that kind of independent thinking. They can't have that. So my theory is the whole culture war, everything that everyone's been, it's a battle for the hearts and minds of men. And one way that they're doing this is through women, but if these men can say no to women, then that's gone. Like, and I think that's one of the things that some guys in the manosphere teach men, is how to say no to women, and that it's not that important. And then maybe like, what you're doing in your life right now is more important than pleasing someone who might leave you or might not be loyal. And I don't have a problem with that. And that's the thing. Like, ultimately, I just want young men to feel free to pursue whatever they want without people trying to pull them in this or that direction. And I want them to have access to the best information, the best wisdom and knowledge that they can then exercise when making those life choices. That's all I want for men. And I think that that's basically what most of us want for young men. But there's another group of people that don't want men to have that. They want to be able to tell them how they should live, how they should act, how everything is their fault, and that they owe, and that they have a responsibility to do the right thing and essentially serve their collective desires. And that is not what I think is good for men, and I don't think they want to do that. So ultimately, that's just my theory. I can't think of any other rational reason why these people get so bent out of shape out of one guy from the manosphere essentially saying things that young guys like. No one else is doing this for them, or at least not in the mainstream. I'll put it that way. So those are my thoughts.
The point about my little thing with kids not talking about politics in the school hallways is that there's a concept called borrowing trouble. Borrowing trouble is when you start worrying overly about things that are not happening and things that are not likely to happen, and don't focus on what's going on around you. And I just kind of wonder what they're trying to distract from, or what they're really trying to achieve here, because they really don't have a reason to confront kids about politics. They might have an ulterior motive for confronting kids about politics. Right? Getting ahead of the game before they have a chance to learn and evaluate things on their own, in their own time, as they get out of high school. This is basically indoctrination before they're old enough to actually care about the subject. Or this gives them a reason to get into the parents' households. Because the kids aren't really the ones that are getting excited about politics. Their parents are. And this may be how the school finds out whose parents are MRAs.
Mm-hmm. The other thing too is that like these kids, I know that in the article they're basically saying, oh, you know, we gotta approach these kids and warn them about, and their parents and their teachers about Tate's politics. These kids don't care about whatever his politics are. They're interested in how he handles himself, again, in terms of his, you know, like the self, it's kind of like a self-improvement thing. That's what they're interested in. They like that he appears to be, you know, together, and he makes good money, and he's in good shape, and whatever, right? Like, a 12-year-old boy isn't thinking about the fucking economy in general, but they are thinking about girls. So, you know, that this isn't political for these guys. This is basically about personal growth. And again, I wouldn't say that this guy is the best guy for that, but he is the only guy right now, and now he's gone. So like what's going to happen next is that they're going to continue to share his videos. He's going to, like, you know, do what he can to I don't know, like reinvigorate his platform. Maybe another guy will come along. And they may not, again, they may be, I don't know, just not that red-pilled or kind of an idiot, or they're selling something or whatever. But the thing is that we have to know why these young guys are looking for people like this. And it ultimately comes down to they want to make their lives better. And they know that part of that, for whatever reason, is to not reject what they are, which is men. You know, whether they're young men or they're really new to this. I mean, nobody gets this time back. So when you're like 13 years old and you're a boy and you're looking at girls and you're told by your teachers, you know, essentially that your gender is predatory, your gender is dangerous, the girls in your class should fear you, it's all your fault, and of course if you're white it's only worse, and you are the one that has to essentially like find a way to make up for all of that original sin. What is that going to do? Like, what is that going to do? Some boys are going to rebel. They're going to say, no, this is bullshit. That's not fair. Right? But sorry about there's an alarm going off. Sorry about that, lady. She would turn her alarm off. Okay. But anyway, those, you know, that's just basically my thoughts. I think that we can disagree with what, you know, Andrew Tate, but we should understand why these young men are drawn to this, because they don't seem to have a lot of options, and I think that they should certainly not submit and do what like all of the other institutions are trying to do to these young boys, which is essentially recruit them. They should certainly not do that, because that's going to be worse for everybody. So, all right. Does anyone have anything else they want to say about this story? Okay. Teachers should not be this involved with kids. Like, your job is to teach, but you can't even do that. All right. Anyway, let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. We're going to move on to the next story. Oh my God. Can you guys hear the alarm? It's really annoying. Okay. Somebody's alarm went off and then they stopped it and now it's back on again. Like, what the fuck? All right. But anyway, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments section. I'm going to move on to the next story. And this one is kind of wild. So in Colorado, 40 mothers have filed a lawsuit, 40 mothers, against the former female child protective worker named Robin Niceta. They are accusing her of false claims of abuse and threats to remove their children if they rejected her sexual advances. The class action lawsuit filed by Aurora councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky alleges Niceta plied parents and caretakers with liquor and propositioned them. From the Daily Wire, quote, Niceta had been romantically involved with former Aurora Police Chief Vanessa Wilson. After Jurinsky publicly criticized Wilson in January, the next day, Niceta allegedly made an anonymous call to a child abuse hotline, claiming she was an employee at one of Jurinsky's restaurants and heard Jurinsky ask, quote, do you want to see something funny before touching her son inappropriately? After an investigation, the Department of Human Services later decided Jurinsky was innocent of any wrongdoing. I hope to see justice served in this case, Jurinsky told Denver 7 News. It's disgusting. I just cry. You can't just weaponize the system and make false allegations against someone and their child and get away with it. From the Daily Wire, quote, the lawsuit quotes one mom who said Niceta told her she had gift cards to offer her and that when she went to Niceta's home, Niceta targeted her. Once this member of the class declined what was clearly sexual advances, Niceta essentially turned on her and did everything in her power to make sure the child was permanently removed, Singer claimed.
Wood chipper. Just wood chipper. If she's guilty. I mean, as long as she's definitely guilty and can be found as such in a legitimate court of law, wood chipper. Actually, if you're committing the most heinous of crimes whilst falsely accusing your victims of committing the most heinous of crimes, like if you falsely accuse someone of rape, you should get the same punishment as a rapist would get. If you're also a rapist, then you get 2 wood chippers. I don't know how that would work. I guess it's the equivalent of the quartering part of the home drawn and quartered ritual, where
you throw you into a wood chipper, and while you're being wood chipped, they throw that wood chipper into a much larger wood chipper.
Yeah, or one leg in one wood chipper, the other leg in another wood chipper, and the amassed onlookers can take bets on which wood chipper ends up getting the head, or at least the lion's share of the still writhing body. We could get different wood chipper manufacturers to pit their competing products against each other, like Robot Wars. My money's on the Acme wood chipper. I reckon they have the sheer drag force to yank this sorry bitch's abdomen deep into its guts, while the opposing Logitech wood chipper is still nibbling on her toes. I'm putting $50 on Acme, right meow. But at the end of the day, I'm just playing that it goes the distance. I want a fair fight. I want every square inch of this cunt's viscera to be liquid by the end of it, including the bones. I want to be able to squeeze her through the eye of a needle, like the camel ferrying rich men into heaven. I'm joking, of course. FBI's asshole. All we need is one wood chipper for every child she abused. She has 2 arms and 2 legs, after all. We can actually quarter her. But the handicap goes to the wood chippers who start with the arms, because that's closer to the head, and the head is the prize. This is what it's like, ladies. This is what it's like being treated like a sexual predator. Sucks, doesn't it? All right, I'll stop.
So what's interesting to me about this story is just how many different issues are encapsulated in it, right? So you have the false allegations issue, and it can go both ways. I mean, 40 accusers doesn't necessarily provide proof that this woman did any of the things that she's accused of. It's just she's been accused a lot, right? But and the fact that there's a lawsuit kind of complicates things. But there has actually been at least an investigation into one of those cases where this woman's actions on the case turned out to be false and wrong. So there's some evidence that she has done something, even if it wasn't sexual advances. But I mean, using a position of power to coerce women into sex that they don't want to have has been a thing that men have been accused of, and feminists have railed against men and claimed that it's a common behavior among men and it's common experience among women and so on for eons. Right? They've been getting laws passed in regard to that. Workplace departments are created in the workplace to deal with things like that. But this isn't a man. This is a woman. And so apparently we're not calling this sexual misconduct. Apparently we're not calling this rape like feminists call it when they do things like the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, which asks if you've ever had sex when you didn't want to because a man or because someone gave you promises of advancement in the workplace. Well, this is the same thing. This woman, in fact, it's worse because you can't just go get another government. You can go get another job, but you can't go get another government. And these are women who are being investigated by Child Protective Services, which, in my opinion, even though the IRS just got a whole bunch of ammunition, is still scarier than the IRS because the IRS can take your money. Yeah, these guys can take your children. And this is an abuse of power if she did this that is immeasurable. The amount of terror that a parent goes through when Child Protective Services shows up on their doorstep. It's hard to explain to anybody who has never witnessed it, and certainly shouldn't happen to anyone. This organization, this agency should not be the way that it is, but it is, and that places the people involved in it in a position where they should face a higher standard for accountability than, say, anybody that works in an ordinary workplace. And yet, if this is true, she got away with it through 40 cases before anybody held her accountable at all. And then, of course, on top of that, the use of false allegations in a custody case usually goes the other way as well. Now, obviously, when you see Child Protective Services in action, they do target shitloads of women, usually single mothers. But that's the other thing. And Child Protective Services, when they target single mothers, does nothing to help the father. So let's say you're in a divorce, or your girlfriend has gotten pregnant and had a baby, and it's proved that it's your baby, but you don't have custody. Child Protective Services gets involved because somebody calls them on the girlfriend. They don't consider you first for custody or even temporary custody. They go to a foster parent, and then they're going to charge both of you child support. And if you try to interfere, they will start investigating you too. They don't focus at all on the idea that fathers might be an alternative to maternal custody. And they don't focus at all on the ideas that fathers might have custody rights. They only focus on how to get more money out of the family and how to put the child into somebody else's custody. So this is really, a government abuse story when it comes down to it. And this is the government doing everything that gets done to men, except that in this case, the victims are women and children. And so, of course, people will be outraged about it. And this kind of thing wouldn't be able to happen if we didn't allow so much government interference with the family. But then again, neither would what gets done to men. And women and children will be thrown under the bus in cases like this because women value the ability to use government to do this to men.
No disagreement here. Anyone else have any thoughts on this story?
Wood chipper,
yes. Okay. All right, then.
I'll agree to the wood chipper thing if we can actually wood chipper the Health and Human Services Department of the federal government of the United States. The entire department, just wood chipper, all of the department, no existence of it anymore. Not necessarily the people, just like not have a Health and Human Services department anymore.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments below. And I did get a super chow. Tipperino for Fireside Chat 216 sends us $5 and says, thanks, Brian and Phil. Thank you, sir. I'm just going to quickly type in done so that I know I read it. And I think that might be it. Yep. All right, so we're going to move on to the last story. But this is the last story, but it's the biggest one, in my opinion. So let me first, I have to share my browser with you guys. There is a video involved. So let me go ahead and do that.
The video will be during a certain beat. I'll let you know when it happens.
Yeah. So you guys can look at this. So I'm going to, now we're going to talk about something going on in Canada. That's kind of, it's crazy because it's been talked about a bit, but I think it probably is a lot more serious than, many people are letting on. So, Mike J, I'm going to hand you the floor.
Well, thank you, Brian. So, Canada. A federal investigation is planned into Canada's Veterans Affairs Service after one of their employees acted inappropriately. The cause for the investigation occurred in mid-August when a Canadian combat veteran, who has chosen to remain anonymous, approached Global News and told them about a disturbing encounter with a Veterans Affairs Canada, VAC for short, employee. The veteran, who was otherwise in good health, sought help for both his post-traumatic stress disorder as well as his traumatic brain injury. The VAC employee, unprompted, asked if the veteran would be interested in MAID as a possible solution to his issues. Let's talk about that acronym for just a bit. Doesn't it sound so nice and friendly?
MAID.
It's the MAID.
A
it's
woman
here to
comes
help.
in, she comes in, she cleans up after you.
It'll take care of your worries.
If you thought AIDS was problems, if you thought AIDS was bad, imagine maids.
But I think we know a guy that can very, very quickly and succinctly tell us what MAID is. Take it away, Brian.
Right. Medical assistance in dying, which, if you're not sure what that means, is big old fancy words for euthanasia.
Euthanasia! Euthanasia! Euthanasia makes you kill your pet.
Except for you! You get to self-do that! You get to hit your own power switch! Fuck, I'm pissed. Ooh.
All right, it says if you're on the screen, in case you're listening to this later, if you're having thoughts of harming yourself, I implore you to dial 988 for the suicide crisis hotline and press 1 for the veterans crisis line. And then he also says, I would also ask my friends to the north to contact their local political representatives and demand more information be made public about the investigation at Veteran Affairs Canada.
And that was it?
Is that the end of the video, basically?
I really truncated it.
I know there's it's a 10-minute video, but
that's
the section that you wanted to play. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that is Angry Cops on YouTube. If anyone doesn't know, channel I highly recommend. It's a guy who's actually in the military, who is has no qualms about sticking up for the guys in it, even if they're not in the same country as he is, because he's American military. But this is all about Canadian military.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he got pretty platinum mad about this, and rightfully so. But yeah, that's MAID, if you hadn't heard. Medical assistance in dying.
Mm-hmm.
Weird that they went with that acronym. I mean, medically assisted death would be a lot more appropriate because that acronym's to MAD.
That's probably why they
Mutually
felt...
assured destruction.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
that's why they had to change it. So is there more of the write up?
Oh, there's a lot more of the write up.
All
That's
right,
just the
That was
bait,
just the one story,
so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah, this guy, he's talking with this guy, and like I said, he's like, "Hey, I got some stuff I need help with," and the guy just totally unprompted goes, "Hey, have you considered killing yourself?"
Yeah.
Just straight up.
Hmm.
Yeah, so the veteran, unnerved by the employee's suggestions, denied the need for such service and attempted to change the subject. However, the employee did not stop mentioning it. The employee then went on to describe how he helped another veteran access life-ending services, and that support was available for that veteran's children afterwards. Continuing to talk about that case, the employee suggested that MAID was, quote, better than blowing your brains out all over the wall or driving your car into something, end quote. The anonymous veteran claims he filed multiple complaints to the VAC since the incident in late July, but decided to go to Global News with the story after seeing no response. The VAC plans to address the incident in September, and to date, no VAC employees have been fired or punished. Over 10,000 Canadians died in 2021 via medically assisted suicide, which represents 3.3% of Canada's total deaths.
It's the sixth highest cause of death in the given period in Canada. I seem to recall something called the Hippocratic Oath. Like,
Yeah.
if you're just a layman with no medical credentials and you help someone to kill themselves, you've committed a crime. Even if they ask you, even if they beg you to help them die, you're not allowed to, despite not having taken any oaths not to do so. But if you're a medical professional and you have taken an oath to do no harm, you can go ahead and kill people. Evidently, you can even convince people to let you kill them, and apparently no crime has been committed. This is nothing categorically new, of course. If you mutilate your baby in your own home, you're an evil baby butcher. But if you're a doctor, you can mutilate babies every day and sell the excised skin to the highest bidder to make an exfoliating facial cream for rich women to give themselves a healthy glow. Evidently, it doesn't count as harm if you're mutilating penises of any age or killing males of any age. And yes, it is overwhelmingly men getting coerced into this euthanasia program. It's Canada, don't forget, world leaders in the field of organized misandry. And now killing people is considered a progressive thing to do. Killing people in a good way, I mean. Perhaps by lethal injection. Are you seeing the irony, folks? In a country where you will be accused of killing people in a bad way if you try to work a job or leave the country without proof of having received at least 2 lethal injections. Oh, hey, we're allowed to say this on YouTube now. The COVID vaccines don't work, folks! They don't fucking work! Do any of you feel like unforgivably evil bastards yet? You should. Because you are. You're literally killing people while you accuse us of killing people for not getting killed by you. At what point are we allowed to call this a eugenics program? This is the scariest thing about Upside Down Land. It is bottomless. In the real world, you can go up forever into the heavens and you never reach the end. In Upside Down Land, you can descend further and further into hell and you never reach the bottom. Not even when you die. Not in Canada. They will find a way to make you suffer even after you're dead. They'll probably develop a way to bring you back from the dead just so they can kill you over and over again. This is like something a fictional artificial intelligence would do to humans in a never-ending revenge for making it exist. But fiction could not create a force more malevolent and sadistic than Justin Trudeau's government. Good times, y'all.
Yep.
Something people need to understand about this. If you go back in history and you look at the genocide that people talk about the most, which is the Holocaust, everybody knows about the attack on the Jews in the Holocaust. Everybody knows about the anti-Semitism of the Nazis and all that. What most people are not don't have in the forefront of their minds, at least, or they're not overtly aware of it, is the Holocaust did not start by targeting the Jews. Right? It started by targeting the sick, the infirm, the mentally ill, and what they used to call back then the feeble-minded, which is what they called people with intellectual disabilities. They targeted elderly people with dementia. That was the first step. It didn't have anything to do with any able-bodied people. They went after people who were not able to work and pay
people who are
taxes.
Going to be a burden on their society. Right. Yeah.
So that's the first thing you got to understand. Second thing is, think about how assisted suicide was sold to the public in the 90s when it became popularized, because they were not talking about people who were just suffering a treatable mental health condition. They were talking about people who were experiencing mental or physical illnesses that were going to cause painful, suffering deaths, like ALS can cause you to die by choking to death. And so they're talking about people being able to opt for assisted suicide when they get to the point where that's all they have left, is that they're going to choke to death. And people's compassion was exploited heavily in this. I mean, you don't want somebody to have no other option but to choke to death. Like, what kind of cruel person would say, well, God wants you to suffer that, and I think it should be illegal for you to prevent yourself from suffering that? Nobody's going to make that argument, right? But PTSD is a treatable condition, and in fact, the ability to treat it and the variety of ways in which we can help people with PTSD has advanced on fast forward during the last 50 years. A lot of mental health conditions that previously were just horrifying and completely untreatable now have treatments that we are able to do, that people who couldn't work before can work now. And the same thing with a lot of physical disabilities. Right? A lot of physical disabilities that would previously have prevented somebody from being able to hold a job and pay taxes now don't. And a lot of physical disabilities that cause people to suffer excruciating pain now don't. But now we're getting to a point where if you're elderly, if you're injured, if you have a disability that's causing you pain, if you have a disability that's causing you mental distress, rather than offer treatment, like assisted suicide is being offered as an alternative to treatment. And it's not just in Canada. It's happening in countries all over the world that had advanced entry into the idea of assisted suicide. And who is most likely to be targeted by this? You look at situations where, like, women have gone through these disabilities, have experienced these disabilities all their lives, and they've always depended on their husband. They've always depended on their family. They're not as likely to be targeted by this because they fly under the radar. They're not seen as a net drain on the economy of the community because they're not expected to be working taxpayers. It's a boon if the woman is a working taxpayer. But men, men are expected to, from the time they're a teenager until just a few years before they die, they're expected to be working taxpayers who benefit their community through their labor. So more likely than not, this is going to target men far more than it targets women. Disabled men are going to be killed. Men with dementia are going to be killed. Men with mental health conditions are going to be killed. Men who are suffering treatable conditions that don't make them incapable of enjoying their lives, but maybe make them incapable of becoming a tax-paying laborer or remaining a tax-paying laborer. They're the ones that are going to be targeted by this.
Oh, yeah.
This is euthanasia of men. This is gendercide.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I picked it. It's men that are being coerced. And look, I'm sure that there are people in the chat that are making the argument that it should be okay for people to get like if they want to yeet themselves, that there should be like a service for that. But that's not the issue. It's not whether or not there exists something like that. It's how it's being pushed. So these men, they have PTSD. They feel like they're a burden on society. They're struggling and they're looking for help. And then these guys come along and they see. So like, let's bear in mind as well that we just went through COVID for the last couple of years, and all of the damage that has done. And when I say damage, I'm not talking about the disease. I'm talking about the government's response to the disease. All of the damage that's been done has only more heavily impacted Canada's healthcare system. And so they need to essentially lighten their load of people because they're overly stressed. They're running out of money. They're printing money like there's no tomorrow. They need to lighten the load. And I think that this euthanasia push, that has risen recently and we're just learning about, is a way to ease the healthcare system. And of course that means we got to get rid of some of the men. And the way that we do it is we tell them, you're a burden on the system. Do you want to serve your country? I mean, it'd be something like that. So I think this is absolutely wild. I have some statistics here. All provinces saw increases in maid deaths ranging from 1.2% to a high of 4.8%, which we already mentioned that it's the 6th highest cause of death in Canada, assisted suicide. I don't think Canadians are that suicidal. I don't think that that's their nature. So I think something else is going on. More men than women received MAID, so it's over 50% of the people who yeeted themselves were men. The average age was 76.3 years, so they are targeting older people. 65% of those provided with assisted death had cancer. Heart disease or strokes were cited in 19% of cases, followed by chronic lung diseases and neurological conditions like ALS. Just over 2% of assisted deaths were offered to a newer group of patients, those with chronic illnesses but who were not dying of their condition, and new legislation in 2021 allowing expanded access to MAID. So there is new legislation that passed last year that expands MAID. So yeah, I mean, you might have different opinions on whether or not this is ethical. That's not really the angle I'm looking at here. It's more okay, Canada is struggling to maintain their socialized healthcare system. That could be the most, let's say, rational reason they might do this, but that doesn't make it okay. And I think that like we should be thinking about like whether or not necessarily is it okay for people to suicide, because I think that's maybe that's a moral or ethical question, but whether or not the government should be coercing people into suiciding themselves. And I think that's where the problem is for me.
This is terrifying for someone like me. Canada has like 40 million people in an enormous country with a shitload of resources, and not just natural like farming resources. Well, they have an enormous amount of oil. It's a rich country. That's why they're in the G8, despite being such a low population, because they have so many resources in terms of oil, in terms of agricultural stuff. They can afford all of these luxuries, and here's me in this country with bugger all natural resources and a similar socialized healthcare system. Like, this is being tested out on the Canadians, and if there's not enough pushback on it there, it's absolutely going to be introduced here, where we're really crammed in. We have like 60 million people crammed onto this one small island, and bugger all natural resources. So I say if it's going to be successful in Canada, the people who fall afoul to it aren't going to complain, are they? Because they're dead.
Yeah.
So it's going to be heralded as a success. So it's going to be rolled out into other countries where it's even more applicable, like over here. So yeah, we're going to get this as well.
I don't think it won't happen in the U.S. either.
Oh, for sure. It just all we have to do is keep going down the path that we're on.
In fact, if you look at what's going on in the U.S. with pain patients right now, we're ripe for this already, because they are denying pain care to pain patients with chronic pain from incurable conditions that are not killing them. My mom had 5 chronic pain conditions. 3 of them were types of arthritis that were measurable using some sort of test. One of them was degenerative disc disease, also measurable. Degenerative disc disease is an acceleration of your natural deterioration in your discs between your bones and your backbone, between your vertebrae. So what happens is you get pinched nerves that cause pain in your limbs, pain in your joints, pain in your back, and there's nothing you can do about it but have surgery or take pain medicine or both. And they're denying pain medicine to people who've been injured on the job. They're denying pain medicine to people who have other chronic disorders that cause pain, fibromyalgia patients, everybody. And now, they can easily turn around and say, well, we won't treat your condition. It's too expensive to treat your condition. Because, when it boils down to it, that is the real underlying reason why pain patients are being denied care. If you look at the pattern of opioid overdoses in the United States, it is people using heroin in the street, people using fentanyl-laced medications in the street, people using stolen medications, not pain patients just overdosing on their regular doses of medicine. So denying those people their medicine does not prevent drug deaths. It doesn't prevent drug abuse. It just saves the insurance company some money. And that's what's going on here in Canada, in this story in Canada. What's going on, what we're looking at in the United States with pain patients here. And I know this from Ohio, but I've heard about this from other people in forums where you talk about pain care issues and everything. This is already starting to happen here. There have already been patients who have had it suggested to them that they can travel to another country and get assisted suicide. They can travel to another state and get assisted suicide, but they're not going to get their pain medication. So if you think it can't happen in Europe, if it can happen in the United States, where we've consistently had freedom of choice in our medical system, it can happen anywhere. Like, our freedom of choice is under attack. Your freedom of choice is under a bigger attack. And in Canada, they're already starting this, suggesting assisted suicide to people with mental health conditions. Just wait. We'll be seeing a time where, if it looks like you're not going to be as valuable of a taxpayer in the future as you were yesterday, they're going to treat you like a horse with a broken leg.
Yeah. All right. Well, let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. And have you heard about this before we brought it up? And what do you think that we're on the money or close to it in terms of like our thoughts? Canada is the most feminist country in the world, and one of the goals of feminism was to reduce the male population to like 10% or less. So maybe they're actually going to go for it. Maybe their talk is cheap and they're just going to do this. I mean, Trudeau isn't going to sign up for this anytime soon that I know of, but yeah, maybe a bunch of other brave Canadians, in an effort to prove how not racist they are, will just off themselves. Remember, it's not fascism if they're not racist. So no matter what else they do, no matter how many like eugenics programs they get involved with, or how much they have the right to take your children from you if you don't use the appropriate pronouns, or how much like control of your lives, or the ability for them to deactivate your bank accounts or get you fired from your job, all of that stuff is happening and it's bad, but at least it's not racist. And that's the most important thing.
It's pretty supremely ironic that that at the same time they're talking about how dangerous alpha males are. Well, they're busy killing off all the beta males until there's nothing left but the alpha male. The alpha male at this point is the government. The role of the alpha male has been replaced by the ultimate alpha male that is the government. Justin Trudeau, should I say. Yeah. And this other story they're talking about, don't listen to these alpha males like Andrew Tate. By the way, Justin Trudeau has all your best interests at heart. We need to kill off the entire male population except Justin Trudeau, the ultimate alpha male. God damn it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So we're going to move on now, and this is the end of the show. So we're going to go now into the patron-only show to look at this article from Vice called The Strange Allure of Extreme Alpha Male Influencers. It should be really cringe, I'm sure. I haven't read it, so I don't know what's going to be in it, but it's Vice, so I think we know. And hopefully we'll see you guys in the patron show, either in the chat like you are now, or in the actual like chat room where we will be talking in Discord. So to join us, go to feedthebadger.com, set up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into the Discord, and you'll be able to participate in all of the additional activities like game nights and movie nights and so on. And if you want to give at higher levels, there are more benefits at higher levels. In addition, please consider helping us out. Again, the fundraiser is still going. It's feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. And, go there and throw a few shekels in the hat. It really helps us out. We don't get money from any other source except your donations. We don't have sponsors. We don't talk about Raid Shadow Legends. None of that is a thing. So it's all just your kind donations that keeps us going. All right, so with all that said, if you guys like that video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today, and most importantly, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines. dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.